with that. I wanted to ask you while we're still waiting for Alex to get everything all linked up here, about his Why I Sit essay from a couple years ago. I know it's a big part of why we have you guys on, because that's really remarkable. I was reading up on it yesterday and this morning. I guess just as his parent, what was your reaction when he first sat for the national anthem during, it was a freshman basketball game?
Yes.
And then basically I believe his coach asked him to write the essay just to explain it, not sort of challenging it, but just wanting to understand it. I guess what was your reaction when he didn't stand for the anthem and was sitting, and then the things that followed?
Well, my wife and I, we weren't there when he first did it. We were on our way with our younger son, Christopher, coming from a game in Charlotte, and his game
Okay.
was in DeWitt.
So that
So,
parenting shuffle.
yeah, exactly. You get it. So we were, there, and what ended up happening is after the game, the coach sent me a text message and said, "Hey, could I talk to you guys after the game?" Said, "Sure, no problem." And Coach Mays, said, "Hey, well, Alex didn't stand for the anthem. I just wanted to understand, why." And we, had the conversation, and it was an interesting thing. Now, in terms of writing the essay, that was something that my wife and I actually challenged Alex to do, because understanding that not everyone understands why you do what you do, you need to clearly articulate and convey what it is that you want to share. So that was a challenge, from us to him. Understanding people are going to say, "Oh, it's just a fad. Oh, he's not serious." I said, "Well, okay, we'll dig deep. Do your research, and bring me, your essay." And after 3 edits, then I said, "Okay, now we'll send that to your coach." And then from there, he sent it to a city council, and kind of one thing led to another.
Right. Well, Alex is here with us now, getting back from football practice. Alex, feel free to unmute yourself. And um, first off, I just wanted to ask you, Alex, since I had Sam do it, just introduce yourself, sort of your relationship with Eli, having done the summer youth journalism program, and then some of the other stuff you've done. Namely, we're talking about your Why I Sit essay right now, but just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Alex Hosey. I'm a senior at East Lansing High School, and I've been a journalist for Eli since I was a sophomore, I believe. And yeah, I guess it's like going way back. It feels like almost, since this year has been like a crazy one. But
just wait till you graduate college. High school will feel even longer ago.
I'm not looking forward to that. But it feels like, honestly, it's been only a year since I was a freshman and I was like doing the protests. I was sitting for the national anthem during my basketball games, and everything that happened after that seems like a blur now almost. It was like, wait, what? It was like bam, bam, bam. And like, then I was sitting with the mayor. It was like a really succession.
I guess, did you ever imagine that you just doing that simple thing could result in the city of East Lansing formally apologizing for its history of racism? Or were you just trying to, do that for yourself, I guess, at first?
I believe it was for myself at first. I had that wasn't even my mind space. I didn't even think like, oh, maybe the mayor will listen to me. No, not at all. I was a kid who was fed up with looking out and seeing that people weren't being heard. And I wanted to be a part of those people trying to get their voices heard. I didn't want to stay silent anymore.
Right. And then I guess you didn't. And take me through, I guess, just the process of from you first sitting to you, being at that city council meeting about, a month or so later, where they're actually passing that resolution. I guess, what was that month or 5-6 weeks like for you personally?
It was like surreal, or like it felt like a dream, honestly, because I remember sitting down for the national anthem before my game, went to play my game. Like, my coach had told me, like, yeah, we're going to talk with your parents after the game. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I hope I don't get in trouble. But we talked about it. We had a conversation with the coach, and it's like, so what are you doing? And I had to explain to him what I was doing. And then he challenged me, and then my parents challenged me also, like, to try and explain myself in a intellectual way. So I wrote the essay, and I was like, I handed it off to I gave it to my teacher. I mean, my coach. In this case, he was both my teacher and my coach.
Right.
I gave it to him, and I was like, okay, I guess that's as far as I go. And then he called back and was like, yeah, I gave it to my friend on the city council, and they want to have a meeting. Like, excuse me, what? Like, because I was just a kid. I was like, wait, I had just turned 15 at the time, so I was like, oh, I'm going to winter break, like, so I'm going to see them in office. I didn't even know like how I was supposed to act. I was supposed to be, because
It's like the ultimate called to the principal office kind of thing.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, am I in trouble or am I good? Like, what did I? When we got there, we started talking about it. Like, I remember hearing like the discussion with like Mrs. Draheim and the mayor and my parents, and I was sitting there like, wow, I'm really here right now. Like, it
So
was like,
Alex, one of the things you were talking about in your essay, one of the things you brought up is your family goes way back in East Lansing, but is one of the families that experienced housing discrimination that East Lansing sort of papered over. And one of the things you were concerned about was that you're at East Lansing High School and yet not learning about this history at all, even though it's a very local history that's incredibly relevant to the history of racism and civil rights in America. But it's basically not in our school curriculum. And so that's one of the things you were pointing to. And I'm curious to know if that has changed at East Lansing High School. Do we now have kids learning actively about the redlining that occurred in East Lansing?
I can't speak to the active redlining being taught. I can speak to their teaching more about the history around like our area and like speaking on it. Cause I remember my freshman year, like they started introducing something in English class, and like my name was brought up, and I was like, wait, what? Like, they started to teach it like more in that sense, but also I don't know, since I'm in like higher class levels, I don't know exactly what they teach down. Like, maybe they started teaching more about it like as with like the freshmen and whatnot, but I have not experienced it myself. But I know because I've sat in on some classes of them, and they've talked to a little bit about like how redlining has affected the people in our area and that type of thing.
So we had the public discussion at the Hannah Community Center about racism in East Lansing, and I thought that was a very powerful thing. You were on that. The Ron Bacon, who is now on City Council, is going to be joining you all at 2:30, was on that. And one of the things that happened was Kristen Shelley showed the map that actually was the redlining map of East Lansing. That was specifically the map used to figure out where Black people and African Americans should be allowed to purchase houses or not allowed to purchase houses. And I thought that was incredibly powerful, seeing the actual map that basically was the instructions of who was allowed to live where. It was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw it, I was in shock, honestly, because I thought, I was still in the optimistic phase. Like, I was like, oh, this probably wasn't even that bad. Then I saw the map and I was like, oh wow, it was like widespread. Like, it was
real.
All area.
Yeah.
One of the if I could, one of the things that, like, because these are my folks, and and one of the things about that was it was very intentional. There were, white citizens that intentionally ensured that Blacks did not get an opportunity, and that was something that is hard for some people to even discuss and bring up. And so, as it pertains to the curriculum, the way I understand it, there's a curriculum unit that is taught, and it's a few days. It's not like a long, but there's a unit where they talk about different instances of discrimination that occurred, and one of the things that they asked for was, please give us a date and a time period when someone experienced racism. So my father told me a story that we shared with the history department at the high school. And it was in 1969. My parents moved to East Lansing in January of 69 after they were allowed to, after, the Fair Housing Act in April of 68. So my parents, one of the first Black families. My dad is cutting grass, at his house, on Harrison and Blanchette by Pinecrest Elementary. And someone walked up to him and said, how much do you charge? asking my father, because he can't live there. He's a groundskeeper,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But my father, he was a pharmacist, so definitely wasn't that. However, that was just an example. And that was one of the things that we had shared with the teaching of the curriculum unit that they have. So now just
Right.
interesting history that is very, very close and hits close to home.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask Alex about that personally. Do you think that, I guess this is something that's important no matter what, but do you think having that personal history of that, it being, people you knew, like your grandparents, do you think that helped you in the impact of this and sort of channeling that essay? Because I read the essay and it's really, really powerful, and just, saying like, this was my family that this happened to, not just, some people who look like me even.
Definitely, honestly, because I always saw my grandparents as like standard. I grew up and I looked to them and I was like, that's what I want to be, because they were like very disciplined, like the way they pronounce stuff, just the way they talk, the way they did things. I was like, wow, like nobody does that anymore. And I wanted to like aspire to be like that. And the fact that they themselves, even though they hadn't done anything like wrong, they were the ones that were being discriminated against. It was like, wait, why? But what did they do? Nothing. They didn't do anything. It was just because of the color of their skin. And I was like, wow. And they were my family. And a similar event happened actually, that also tied into it. And then my dad told me the story. So what had happened was my brothers and we were doing some yard work, right? And somebody came up and asked my mom, how much do we charge? And we were like, I mean, I was younger, so I was like, what does that mean, Mom?
Wow.
And she went off, but I was like, but after that, they had a discussion and they told us like, it's because you're a Black man and like, you're not supposed to be in this area, quote unquote. And so having those two examples really put it in perspective for myself, because I had experience and I've heard experience from people that I trust more than anybody. So.
Right.
So since this resolution was done, I'm curious about whether or not the two of you feel, I mean, it's not your job to follow East Lansing and push city council to keep their commitments, but do you feel like there's been adequate attention in East Lansing to these issues since your resolution was passed?
I have not we had our discussion that one year and we said we were going to follow up, but we never had a follow-up, like a follow-up meeting or discussion or anything. So that was a little curious to me, but I think we've taken steps in other aspects, but in this particular aspect, I do not have gone as far as I would think is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if I could, tag on to that. Yeah, it was disappointing because, we were essentially promised that every year we would have a conversation about this. And obviously that hasn't happened. And then yet, when the events in this country unfolded, we started having these conversations again. And so East Lansing, in my opinion, missed an opportunity to be ahead of the curve once again by just allowing that to kind of, get shoved to the back burner, whereas we could have and should have, I think in hindsight, kept it in the forefront. Let's have these conversations, these difficult conversations, because it's not going away. And it's something that as a society, as we can see how polarized things are, we need to continue to at least have conversation. We may not agree, but let's continue to talk and have relationship. And I think the city missed an opportunity. Hopefully with some of the new city council, and there's been a lot of turnover, that will change. But in the last couple years, we